think that means that somebody might be away from their computer. Got it. Okay. Okay. I think I found I was able to mute the one mic where I think somebody has stepped away from their computer. So I think we're good to go now. So let's jump in here. I'm going to and the way we're going to do this is each time we meet together, we are going to be we're going to be focusing on some of the modules that are available through Project Core. They are video based. We'll watch them. We'll stop. We'll have some time for discussions, and we'll go from there. And last year when we did this for the first time, I was initially kind of a little bit worried because I thought, how will that work? Well, is that going to work well for us to connect via video conference and watch videos for part of the time? And it actually worked out pretty well. So I'm crossing my fingers and hoping, technologically and otherwise, it will work well again. So on our site here, I'm going to the overview, and we're gonna watch that video. And let me click there. And I can take a minute now to point out, if you can see here what I've gone to. That's something I wanted to mention too, is that all these materials, they're just living out there on the Project Core website. And in fact, what you're looking at right now is the facilitated version. So you can see it has the video embedded there for this first little mini module. It even has a facilitator's guide, handouts, things like that. So they're designed to be done kind of like we're doing, working together as a group. But also on the Project Core website, there's the videos are out there in a way that you could just take them completely independently as well. But hopefully, if you had a chance, you can see here for this first one, there's 2 handouts that we'll use when we stop for some discussions. I kind of suggested that if you wanted to print them, that might be helpful. If you didn't, don't worry about it, because you can certainly pull them up on your screen for discussions as well. But let's go ahead and start our first video. And I think I'm okay with volume here, and we'll go from there.
Welcome to the Project Core Professional Development modules. This module, Project Core and Overview, is designed to explain the focus, goals, and intended outcomes of the project, as well as the research on which it is based. Project Core is being conducted by the Center for Literacy and Disability Studies, a unit in the Allied Health Sciences Department at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Project Core is a multi-year grant with the primary goal of developing a comprehensive implementation program to deliver the multi-tiered System for Augmenting Language Intervention, or EMSAL. The EMSAL approach is being designed to help students with significant cognitive disabilities and complex communication needs learn to communicate symbolically with a variety of people for a variety of purposes. Throughout this 5-year project, staff at the Center for Literacy and Disability Studies and educators in partner schools will work together to develop and refine student communication supports and implementation tools. We will also develop online supports like this professional development series to help teachers learn about and use EMSAL to support their students. Everything will be distributed freely through the Project Core website, which can be accessed at the URL shown at the bottom of the screen, www.project-core.com. Throughout the 5-year project, the website will regularly be updated, so please be sure to visit the website periodically to see what has been added. Project Core is guided by the philosophy that communication is a basic human right, and that all individuals, regardless of the severity of their disability, have the right to instruction that will help them develop versatile communication skills. For students with significant cognitive disabilities, this instruction has to permeate their school day and their life to the greatest extent possible. Core vocabulary is one way to support communication across the day. A core vocabulary is a small set of words that are used frequently in communication across contexts and purposes. Since they are used so often, core vocabulary words provide dramatically increased opportunities for teaching and learning when compared to activity or context-specific vocabulary. We believe teachers have the ability to acquire the knowledge, skills, and dispositions needed to help students with significant cognitive disabilities acquire versatile communication skills using a core vocabulary approach. This is important given that teachers are the professionals who have the most contact with students on a day-to-day basis. Teachers have the greatest opportunity to teach and use core vocabulary with their students. Teachers have the greatest control over the integration of communication instruction throughout the school day. We believe teachers offer a solution, and with the support of speech-language pathologists and others, teachers can make an important difference in the lives of the children they teach. Pause for activity 1.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pull up, this is handout 1, and this is just kind of a quick, if you've got that on paper, you know, again, that might be handy, or you can pull that up on your screen as well. And so, folks, bear with me while I back up here. Sorry about that. Okay, so this is just something really, and you're all, and most of you are out there on your own. So these are just kind of questions to ponder here. So assessing the fit of project core implementation. So first question, I can just ask it, and we can take some time for discussion. But first question is: do you have students who cannot use symbolic language, such as speech signs or symbols, to communicate for a variety of purposes across contexts and patterns? Second question here is: do you have students who struggle with academic instruction because they lack sufficient communication skills? And then the third one is: do teachers, other classroom staff, and related service providers believe students can learn if they are provided with appropriate instruction, support, and services? So just you can answer those questions for yourself at your place where you are right now, but just I can open this up for discussion. Does anybody have any thoughts about this? So what these questions are just trying to get you to ponder, you know, how a core vocabulary approach might fit for you with the kids that you're working with. So I don't know if anybody wants to share a little bit about the kind of kids that they have, as far as whether or not they have symbolic language, whether they don't. Just any thoughts from the field out there. So we're kind of just like kind of a prelude, thinking about whether or not this project is going to be a good fit for some of the kids that you're working for.
I can share.
Yep.
So I have 2 students that are using NovaChat to communicate, as well as a communication app called GoTalk. And they've both been successful using their communication devices to indicate preferred and non-preferred items, as well as asking for a drink. One student has been able to use his NovaChat to identify letters. But that's part of what I'm hoping to get out of this class, is to increase my own understanding of whether or not they understand symbolic communication.
Okay, and so they are, you know, as you said, they're using devices. Is there are there situations where there's definitely intention, that kind of thing, or are there question marks as far as how intentionally they're using the devices?
For one of my students, I think there's a lot of intentionality behind how he uses his communication device. And for another student, I have some questions. They've been able to score around 75% when we're asking questions around a story, but I just still have some questions about how much they understand it. So.
Thank you.
I have a kiddo who uses InnovaChat and does not, it is fairly unsuccessful, you know, answering questions, or, I mean, nonverbal. So, and then I have, you know, other kiddos who don't have a communication device, but who are on the spectrum, who communication-wise have difficulty answering questions, or, you know, any direct question. They have difficulty being specific and answering that question. But so is that kind of where I'm not really clear what the Project Core is, you know, is that the students that we're trying to target, Ron?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I mean, and as we go on here, we'll get a little bit more into this. I mean, it really, you know, the position of Project Core really is that even kids who are at the pre-conventional level of communication, you know, this can be appropriate to start working on core vocabulary, and we'll get a lot into really heavily modeling use of the vocabulary, so that even kids who aren't there yet, that are pre-conventional, that are not yet using symbols, you know, the philosophy is that they can get there, you know, with lots of modeling of language and using visuals. But the project does take the position that even kids who are not there yet, you know, kids, you can put a device or a template with picture cues, and they're not independently doing that yet. It will get into routines where you're modeling that heavy with the idea that they could progress on that. So yeah, good question, Bob.
We have a student, this is, I don't know if they can see me or not.
Oh.
It doesn't matter. We have a student with autism that has a few words on his NovaChat. Some real important ones, more Doritos, that's our most important one. But he has bathroom, and he will say hello to different people. But my SLP, Cindy, wrote a really nice rubric using the core vocabulary, and not only then will that be worked on in speech, but that's going to be worked on in his other SDI, because, you know, we know that there's a lot he wants to tell us, and he can't seem to get things matched up on his NovaChat to be able to do it. So we're hoping that using this vocabulary maybe will be able to have him express himself a little bit more than just the few things that he tells us now.
Thanks, Kelly. And you were mentioning Cindy, and I'm concerned because I don't know if she was able to log back in. Maybe a connection
She was
issue.
going to a different location to find a different internet setup.
Okay. We'll cross our fingers that she can join us again. So.
I'm here. I'm
Oh.
here.
Oh, great. Oh.
Cindy, I just bragged about your rubric.
Oh.
And it sounds like she can hear us, so this is good. This is good. Okay. All right. Anybody else would like to share here? This is just, again, these are just kind of questions to get us thinking and thinking about the kids that you're working with, and you know, the struggles that they currently have with you know, using symbolic communication, and if they have those roadblocks, you know, is that impacting their ability to progress on literacy? Hey, I'm going to, and I bet bear with me. I think I'm having a bad technology day today. I think I meant to pause there, and I think I accidentally closed out. So if you'd bear with me while I get back to where we were, we'll get there.
Variety of people. WW. Core vocabulary. Core vocabulary disability have the right to extent possible. A core vocab when continuing to acquire the knowledge skills using a core vocabulary approach. This is important given that teachers are the on a day-to-day basis. Teachers have the greatest opportunity to teach and use core vocabulary with their students. Teachers have the greatest control over the integration of communication instruction throughout the school day. We believe teachers offer a solution, and with the support of speech-language pathologists and others, teachers can make an important difference in the lives of the children they teach. Pause for activity 1.
Sorry, folks, we'll continue now.
Our vision is that all students with significant cognitive disabilities will have access to a well-organized communication system through the Universal Core Vocabulary. And the Universal Core Vocabulary will be a part of a universal, classroom-based, Tier 1 communication intervention for students with significant cognitive disabilities. This is just our vision for the first phase of the project. It is the vision for Tier 1 of EmSAL. As we move into additional phases, we will be developing Tier 2 specialized interventions and supporting teachers in using the System for Augmenting Language as a Tier 3 intervention. In the end, we intend to promote improvements in student communication abilities and academic achievement, increases in frequency and quality of teacher use of Universal Core and other elements of EmSAL, and the availability of a comprehensive implementation model to support EmSAL use. Our research and work with partner schools through the project will help us achieve the first 2 outcomes. Achieving the third will require an iterative process of development, use, evaluation, and revision of each of the elements of the implementation model. Let's take a closer look at EmSAL. This intervention approach is informed by Marianne Romsky and Rose Sevchek's System for Augmenting Language. EmSAL uses the System for Augmenting Language as a Tier 3 individualized intervention, but adds 2 additional tiers that are intended to offer more universal supports for the large number of students with significant cognitive disabilities who do not currently have a means of symbolic communication. Tier 1 is focused on the classroom and classroom teacher. It offers a universal approach to supporting symbolic communication learning and use through the Universal Core Vocabulary. The second tier builds on the first by engaging with speech-language pathologists and other team members in identifying additional specialized vocabulary that might promote more or continued student communication gains. Each tier includes 5 elements that are critical to the successful implementation of EmSAL. They are a well-organized AAC system, core vocabulary and symbols, use of natural everyday environments for teaching, models of symbol use by partners, and ongoing resource support and feedback. Each of these elements will be evaluated through classroom-based research, and all resources will be available through the Project Core website. The Universal Core Vocabulary currently includes 36 words that are meaningful as single word utterances, can be combined meaningfully, and are useful across environments, activities, and interactions. The Universal Core Vocabulary is and will continue to be available in a number of different formats through the Project Core website. As explained, the Universal Core Vocabulary includes 36 words. Currently available formats support individual student use and classroom use. They are available in formats with all 36 words on one page and with 4 on a page across 9 pages to support students who need large targets for direct selecting or touch, and students who use partner-assisted scanning in the 4 inline format. The boards are available in multiple symbol systems and in high contrast to address the needs of some students with visual impairments. We are also investigating the use of 3D tactual symbols for students who are blind. You can download the print-ready computer-aided design or CAD files to print to a 3D printer from the Project Core website.
I just paused there, just reminding you, throwing in there that, and we can, I'll demonstrate this, I'll show you where these are, but all of these tools, and you know, the ability to print out very clean versions of the core vocabulary in different formats, they're available on the website, which is a really, really nice thing. They put it all out there. And even those tactile symbols for students who may be blind or potentially even students that have very profound levels, you know, if something would be helpful, a tactile, something they could hold in their hand. The code for doing those are out there, and we actually we're able to print a few of those with the 3D printer in the AA Media Center. So even the ability to get those at a very, very low cost is out there. So that's one nice thing about the project is the tools are there.
A great deal of thought and planning was put into the arrangement of each universal core vocabulary format. If you use the 2x2 format with 4 locations per page across 9 pages, note that the 4 symbols on each page remain in the same relative positions they would be in if you would eventually transition to the 36 location format. In other words, the core words like, want, not, and go always remain next to each other in the same positions. This formatting was designed to support teachers in knowing where symbols could be located across a variety of student AAC systems, and so that as symbols were added to student systems, known symbols would remain located in the same neighborhood. Pause for activity 2.
Okay. All right, let's go to handout 2. All right. The ever popular pyramid, something we see a lot of these days, thinking about RTI and MTSS. You can see here that Project Core, I mean, those that have been kind of developing this, I mean, they've kind of made an application to an MTSS system. And this first page of the handout, I have it up on screen here, and you may have it printed. It was just simply saying, hey, which of these words belongs where? And you'll remember from the video that, you know, the bottom of the pyramid, universal, just like we think of, you know, with our general population, and maybe our students with mild disabilities, that, you know, what's universal core? Then they build up to specialized, you know, specialized vocabulary. You know, Callie mentioned earlier, you know, that, you know, for some students that might be Doritos or something, something like that. And the very top of the pyramid is even the more individualized kind of vocabulary for a student. But the thing I want you to kind of think about here is that, you know, we're in this course, we're primarily focusing on the bottom here. We're, you know, these 36 key vocabulary words, the core vocabulary that, you know, we're thinking of that as kind of universal. You know, kind of almost a gateway of really extremely useful, frequently used words that students could learn to progress, you know, more effectively with core instruction. So, okay, so this, if you would take, it's up on screen here. If you have paper, I'm just going to be quiet for a minute here, a couple minutes, and just a little quiz practice here. Just go ahead and answer these, whether you think each of these are true or false. Just kind of a review of some of the things that they were talking about. We can talk through that together, and just give you about 2 minutes here to quickly jot those down, if you would. So let's just kind of talk through these together. So first one here was each word is, and we're talking about, you know, what we know so far of universal core vocabulary as they've defined it for us so far. Each word is meaningful as a single word. True or false? Anybody want to call it out?
True.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Keep you guys using your mics out there. Yeah, and I'll, after we get through the video here, I want to briefly show you just a little chart that kind of shows how these particular vocabulary words were selected, but that was sort of one of the criteria that meaningful as a single word. Second one, the words are a large set of vocabulary students must memorize. True or false?
False?
Yep, so it's a relatively small set of 36 we're talking about, and it's not about memorizing words, it's about getting opportunities to use those to communicate meaningfully. Number 3, each word can be combined meaningfully with other words.
Yeah.
Yes,
True.
yes, you bet. Number 4, the words are useful across environments, activities, and interactions.
True.
True, and that's a real key part of the philosophy of using core vocabulary in the formats that they're suggesting here. And I know a good handful of the folks on the class today are speech language pathologists, and so when we're talking about core vocabulary, it's not the intent that a student goes with the SLP and does drill and practice of the vocabulary. Very, very different. It's really the idea that throughout the day, teachers and educators would be using core vocabulary to help students become better communicators. So it's very much meant to be useful across environments, activities, and different kinds of interactions during the school day. And there's just and as we'll learn more about, there's a lot of different formats. It could be both low tech and high tech, because core vocabulary could be a template in a higher tech device, or it could be a laminated piece of paper for some kids. Number 5, the words change based on the activity. True or false?
True.
I put false.
Okay, we have some disagreement, and of course we've just dived into this now, but that is false, because it's the 36 keywords that the vision the kids would be using that all the time throughout their day. Doesn't mean that as they become better communicators, they're gonna communicate in other ways, but the idea is that they're always there. A well-organized kind of beginning level communication system. And number 6, the design allows for a well-organized AAC system.
True.
7, students get multiple opportunities to experience the vocabulary symbols through partner models.
True.
That's true, and that's we will be talking more about this. I mean, lots and lots of modeling is the idea, and the symbols are used in natural everyday environments.
True.
That is true as well. So let's keep watching here.
During the first 2 years of Project CORE, the focus will be on fully developing the EMSAL intervention at Tier 1. We will be working with partner schools, including students, teachers, classroom staff, related service providers, and administrators, to develop and refine our professional development resources, communication tools, coaching supports, and implementation training. During this phase, our goal is to provide all students who do not currently have a well-organized communication system with access to EMSAL Tier 1 communication instruction and support. As indicated by the arrows in the graphic, this process is not linear. The information we gain over time will be used to inform refinements in the program and materials. This concludes the module. Your feedback is important to us.
All right. You do not need to provide feedback at this very point. We'll give you other opportunities. But okay, so this is our first little introductory module there. I want to go back. Well, you can see I'm back on our page, but just going back to, and this will always be at the top of our page here, the grant site itself. All these tools are there. We can look at them real quickly here. So when you go to the Project CORE site itself, you can see, where it says the PD modules, which we're tapping in our course, but the communication systems themselves, we can go on there and you can see what you've got. You have the different ways of portraying the 36 words there. There even is a little selection tool up here where you can take, and we'll play around with this a little bit when we're together on February 1st too, along with using the communication matrix, but there's a little selection tool where you answer a few brief questions about the student characteristics, and it will end up saying, you might want this version, or you might want this version. But you can see here there's, let's just look into a few here. Just sort of a one-page version. You can see it's there, and very nice, clean PDF versions of all those are there in different formats. So we can look at a few here. You know, and there it is, and that's got, you know, there's different versions of this. These are the Meyer-Johnson symbols, and you can see there, by the way, they've gotten permission to use those. You know, our board maker people. So just, you know, here's just a simple one page, you know, would print out on a standard piece of cardstock or paper, could be laminated. You know, for some kids, this is going to be a great way to start. You can see they leave a little bit of space for some variations, but really the focus is really focusing on these key 36 words. So, and then there's also you know, one with just different symbols, the symbol sticks. Same idea, but the different types of visuals and symbols. So just some choices that, and some choices will work better for different kinds of kids. Oops. Pardon me, occasionally I close the wrong thing, but we'll go back in there. And we won't go through all these, but you can see the same thing. These are all downloadable. You know, the Foursquare format. Some are with high contrast for kids that may have visual needs. Here's one that, you know, for a kind of more of 4 across, and you can see how these could be printed, laminated, you know, used with kind of a ring binder to put them together. There is a poster version, you know, ready to go. This, you know, if some of you, you know, had a group of kids where you were using, you know, wanting to use core vocabulary even for large group lessons, you've got something like this ready. You know, this, and I'll have a sample printed out on February 1st that you can kind of look at, but I mean, this could be sent to our print shop and come back to you in a nice poster format, laminated. You can see, you know, you could have copies of these if you wanted, where you would be moving the squares up here to make sentences. So there's a poster format. So just lots of options, and the tools are all kind of living here on the grant site. And as I mentioned, these are just for the 3D symbols. There's also the code there that allows, you know, can allow you to print these through a 3D printer, and we can do that through our media center as well. So all the tools are there. And I won't spend a lot of time on this, but I just wanted to point out to you, back to our page here, I have this link that says how were priority core vocabulary words selected. This is a little page from, well, the Center for Literacy and Disability Studies is part of that University of North Carolina project. They're also the people that do Tar Heel Reading Reader, that some of you use that with your students. But I guess what I was going to point out here, for those of you that like research, you're welcome to dig in here. But this is, and you can see how this is very aligned to the dynamic learning maps core vocabulary. But this, you can read more here about the research on how the words were selected. And actually, originally, there was a first 40. So you'll see different things out there that have a 40 version. You know, Project Core itself landed on 36 in their final version. But I'll just it's interesting to look at, and I can let any of you who would like to dig into this more at a different time. But this is just showing a prioritization of a large number of, you can see lots of words here, about close to approaching 500 words that were selected from kind of existing vocabulary systems that were out there working with kids. And they used a pretty complex process of coming up with a prioritization. So, our higher numbers here, these higher numbers are the ones that landed on the 36 or, for DLM 40. So they prioritize, and what you're seeing across here is notations of when these words would be useful for where it says DLMEE, so the essential elements. So the core that your kids are working on and that they're assessed on with a dynamic learning maps assessment. It's showing how this word would fit into certain essential elements, and it's showing alignment with the common core as well. So there was this prioritization of high utility words, and you can see the ones that eventually at the top here that landed on the tool, all the way down to ones that are way at the bottom of the list. And you can see they're more very specific things, rabbit, pig, men, that aren't used as widely. So it was narrowed down to those key 36. So that just us a little bit on how the words were selected. Okay, I'm going to, this next mini module is called Assessing Communication Abilities. We're going to kind of work our way through that, and that's going to lead us into just a brief discussion today on this communication matrix tool, which is an online tool that I said earlier will actually do that. We'll work on that together on February 1st, but this will kind of lead into that. So this is let's go ahead and start here. It's going to talk about the different levels of communication that we need to consider as we plan to teach core vocabulary to our kids. So let's jump in on that one.
Welcome to the Project Core Professional Development modules. This module, Assessing Communication Abilities, is designed to describe how to assess beginning communicators of all ages with complex communication needs. Project Core is being conducted by the Center for Literacy and Disability Studies, a unit in the Allied Health Sciences Department at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. In previous modules, we discussed the fact that everyone communicates. Beginning communicators may communicate in unconventional ways and not even intend to communicate with us. Yet, as educators, we can interpret and build upon their unintentional and unconventional efforts when we can recognize them successfully. In Project Core, we are using the communication matrix as one important tool that helps us recognize the communication behaviors of beginning communicators. The communication matrix, developed by Charity Rowland, is a free assessment tool that was specifically developed for use with beginning communicators. It is designed to identify the behaviors students are currently using to communicate and to provide a framework for thinking about communication goals and intervention. The descriptions included in the communication matrix can help educators learn to recognize small but important differences in the ways that beginning communicators express themselves. It is appropriate for students of all ages who are at the earliest stages of communication. The communication matrix requires observation of student behaviors as they communicate for 4 basic reasons. These basic reasons for communicating are to refuse something, to obtain or get something, to engage in social interactions, and to provide or seek information. As you observe students demonstrating the 4 basic reasons to communicate, the matrix provides a way for you to rate the types of behaviors you observe. The matrix describes 7 levels of communicative behaviors. The lowest level includes reflexive or reactive behaviors that are not used as purposeful or intentional means of communication. The highest levels include the use of words, signs, and/or symbols to intentionally communicate a message. Let's look at these levels more closely. Level 1 is called pre-intentional. At this level, students are communicating in a reflexive or reactive manner. An example of this type of communication might be crying because of pain or discomfort. When a student does this, it is a reaction to that physical state rather than an intentional effort to communicate about the pain or discomfort. Pre-intentional communicative behaviors must be interpreted by others. At level 2, the student demonstrates intentional behavior that functions as communication, but the student does not yet understand that this behavior can be used to control the behavior of another person. For example, a student might intentionally lean toward an object in an effort to inspect or obtain it. Leaning forward is an intentional behavior, but it is not used to communicate with someone else. Typically, intentional behaviors are easier to recognize and interpret than pre-intentional communication behaviors. Once a student reaches level 3, the student is intentionally using behavior to communicate, but the behavior is called unconventional because it is not a behavior that would be socially acceptable as we grow older. An example of this type of communication would be pushing away an unwanted object. While the behavior clearly communicates a message, pushing away is not a conventional or socially acceptable way to refuse something. At level 4, conventional communication, the student uses socially acceptable gestures such as shaking his head to say no or handing an item back to you. The student shown in this picture is demonstrating conventional communication because he's using a conventional gesture, a point, to communicate that he wants something. Levels 5, 6, and 7 are all forms of symbolic communication. At level 5, students use concrete symbols that look much like the items they represent. Here is an example of a line drawing of a toilet. It is a concrete symbol that looks like the thing it represents. In general, people, places, and things are often easy to represent in line drawings. Level 6 communicators use abstract symbols. An example of this is the symbol for the verb do, which is difficult to represent in a picture or line drawing. Here you see a drawing of someone signing do. Other abstract symbols include speech, braille, the alphabet, and written words. At level 7, communicators are able to combine 2 or more symbols using the rules of grammar or syntax. This is not only communication, but it is language, as is demonstrated in the example here, where symbols are combined to construct the message, I can help. Pause for activity 1.
All right. There is a handout. For activity 1, and I think since most of us are individuals at computers rather than being in small groups, I'm thinking this would be a good one that we can kind of talk through together. And so this is kind of a recap application kind of activity for what we just talked about. Thinking about this communication matrix and the different levels. So instructions. In the chart below, list 3 behaviors at each level that you have observed or might observe in some of your own students. For example, breathing rate is listed as a pre-intentional behavior because it's a physical response to a situation. And then adults may be able to interpret how the student is feeling from that, but it would be pre-intentional. So let's just go through each level and just encouraging anybody out there to chime in with examples. So starting with pre-intentional, can anybody think of other kinds of behaviors that a student would do that would probably fall in that pre-intentional level of communication? Anybody? Can anybody think of some?
Do I just talk? Oh, I'm talking. I have a student who will hum after we show her, I don't know, an object, or she hears a sound that she likes or touches something she likes. You'll give her a few seconds and then she'll hum. She'll just and that will tell me that she heard the sound or she felt what I placed by her hand. And that's about as far as it goes. A hum or a smile.
Excellent example. Okay, thank you.
Turning towards a noise or sound.
Okay. Kind of reflexive, sure.
Yeah, reflexive tone that they'll maybe have a positioning change.
Absolutely. Yeah, muscle tone, for some of our kids that we, that tells us something about, what they might be feeling, what might be going on. So that can certainly be one, absolutely. Any other ideas out there?
Maybe some stemming behaviors. I have a student who rocks in her seat if she's happy, if she likes something.
Sure, absolutely. rocking head movements sometimes. Sometimes kids will do things like that. That's great. All examples of pre-intentional kinds of communication that would be more reflexive or kind of reacting. But yet we, you know, as adults, we can glean information on that student from those pre-intentional things. What about how about intentional? Kind of moving up a level here. What could be some and it gets a little tricky here between, you know, as we move up here. Some of these seem to kind of blend, but does anybody have a thought about maybe what could be an intentional communication behavior?
Reaching for something or pushing something away.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Nodding their head.
Good example. Leaning, maybe leaning towards something, or whether it's similar to reaching that was said, absolutely.
Would eye gaze fit in there?
Yes.
I was just going to ask, yep.
Yeah, you know, and in fact,
For avoidance of eye gaze, I'll have kids turn away.
oh yeah, I get it. Good one. Yeah, in fact, you know, yeah, even, you know, some kiddos that are, you know, I don't know if does anybody out there have someone that has used an eye gaze kind of a tech device? I mean, that'd be an example where, you know, a student could only use that kind of technology if they had developed an intentional eye gaze. So yeah, absolutely.
Well, throwing something count? I have a student who throws things when he doesn't want them anymore.
Yes, that there's definitely intention of that. They meant to do that. But that's a good lead into unconventional, because I would almost say that, you know, what was just said there, that could probably fit maybe in both of these categories. But what about unconventional communication?
Would that be like screaming when they don't want to do something anymore?
Yes, I think so, because they were, you know, I think it was pointed out in the video, was kind of characterizing this as unconventional communications while they're at or beyond the intent. You know, they're using intent. They may not be, wouldn't be socially acceptable. So screaming or even vocalizing, you know, vocalizing if something stopped. Hey, my activity that I'm enjoying stopped, and I'm now going to complain about it, or vocalize about it, and that would, you know, but so that's definitely sending us a message, but it's but not a traditional socially acceptable kind of behavior. And think of others.
Physically, like, you know, like, I don't know if it's a behavior issue, like throwing themselves on the ground or pulling away, or, you know, if they didn't want to do something. I'm not sure.
Or hitting.
Hitting. Yeah.
Or yeah, absolutely. Those all fit. You know, or if something was put in front of the student, they shoved it away, pushed it away, you know, something they did not want. Okay, yeah. So those are good examples. Okay, so but then if we jump a step up from unconventional to conventional communication, and now we're kind of thinking, you know, so conventional communication, but not quite at that symbolic level yet. Can anybody share your ideas about what would be a couple examples of conventional communication?
Like pointing?
Absolutely.
Would signs fall into this category yet, or is that further?
I would say that would be, you know, when we're at the point of signing, we're using symbols. So I think that's maybe a step up, but you know, we're in the territory there.
What about using communication switches based on their location in the room, not necessarily the symbol that's on them?
Yeah, I think that would fit. I would think that would fit, you know, because, you know, that's I mean, that's kind of the equivalent of it's a technology application of pointing in a sense. So yeah, I think so. I think so. But you're right. If they were responding to a switch based on the symbol, that we would have moved up a step there. So
Would be putting something away when the student feels that they're done with it, would that be in this category?
I think so. Yeah. Because it wouldn't, that when we were kind of characterizing unconventional, that's yeah, I think that would fit there, because it would be socially acceptable as opposed to throwing across the room or those kinds of things. So
Would choosing between two objects, like choosing between two books or two stuffed animals or two activities, like two picture cards, would that be considered above, or would it stay at that conventional communication?
I think that would be, I believe that would be conventional still, because, various objects, you grab it, you point to it. Yeah, I think that's,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
So thinking in terms of like the object is concrete. It's, it's
Right. I'm thinking of the scales that we work with in the ELAA, and where they have to actually select something versus, pointing to a symbol to tell you that they want something. It's just selection, kind of simple.
Yes.
So, all right.
Absolutely. Let's see. So let's jump up to abstract symbols. What's that going to start to look like?
It could be like a picture exchange system.
Absolutely. Someone said signing. Now we're at, if a student was using signs, this would be abstract symbols. Using picture symbols. I mean, in fact, even when we start looking at the, when students are independently using, like for example, a Project Core board, if they're independently using that, we would be getting, they certainly would be using abstract symbols to communicate. And even single word utterances, just labels, could probably be here. Edging into the next one of language, which I think we all, so when we get to that 7, we're talking about, using words, combining words, or combining, if a student was nonverbal or had difficulty with vocalization, there could be a student who would even, combine symbols or combine words without vocalizing them, but they'd still be at that that language level. Okay, so that's good. So that's just kind of walk through now, and you saw in the video these are the different communication levels, and we'll see this in the matrix as well. But then also think they talked about there's different functions, refusal. So students can communicate to refuse something. They can use it to obtain something. They can use it for social reasons, or to provide information or seek information. So think about these levels and then those functions, and we're going to turn that into a kind of a matrix view of their communication skills. So let's continue on with our video.
Most beginning communicators demonstrate a range of communication skills. Depending on their experiences and their preferences, they may communicate at higher levels for some of the 4 reasons than others. For example, some students learn to use symbols to obtain reinforcing objects, foods, or activities. They may be able to exchange single, concrete symbols to make these requests at a level 5. They may combine symbols to create a sentence, I want, plus the symbol for the reinforcing object, food, or activity. This is communication at level 7. While the student is communicating at level 5, 6, or 7 to obtain reinforcing objects, foods, or activities, they may not be able to use any form of symbolic communication to engage in social interaction. The communication matrix allows us to identify these discrepancies and identify areas where our students may need more opportunities to develop and expand their communication skills. Determining intent is one of the more challenging aspects of observing and interpreting the communicative behaviors of beginning communicators. When considering whether a student is intentionally trying to communicate a message, you might first want to determine if the behavior is only present when another person is present. You might also look to see if the behavior is directed toward another person. These are two of the questions Charity Rowland suggests we ask when trying to determine intent. Other questions revolve around the communication partner's response. For example, does the student appear to wait for a response? Does the student keep trying if no one responds? When you or someone else does respond, does the student stop? Finally, does the student get upset if the response is not what was desired? These questions will help you decide if your student is currently communicating with intent. Once you complete the communication matrix, think about how your students communicate. Are your students using symbols, or do you understand them through changes in their body, the sounds they make, their moods, their gestures, or their facial expressions? Even when students use symbols to communicate, they will also continue to use forms of non-symbolic communication, just as all of us do. Let's take another look at the Universal Core vocabulary that we are using as part of the multi-tiered system for augmenting language in Project Core. Here, the words are represented by picture communication symbols from Mayor Johnson. If you think about the 7 levels of communication described in the communication matrix, you might think that a student using the Universal Core would need to be a level 6 or level 7 communicator. That is because the words and symbols used in the Universal Core are abstract and can be expressed as either individual words, which would represent level 6, or combined to create sentences and phrases, which would represent level 7. However, in Project Core, we are not waiting for students to demonstrate the ability to use symbols to communicate before we introduce the Universal Core. We are teaching and modeling the Universal Core as one way to help students learn to use symbols to communicate.
I just paused there, so that just wanted to kind of reiterate that really is a strong philosophy of this project per se. You know, they pointed out that, you know, as we just talked through those different levels of communication, you know, it seems kind of intuitive that, well, gee, you might have to be at a 5 or 6 or a 7 to even use this kind of approach, but they're very much saying that even students that are currently at much lower levels, we're going to do lots of modeling, lots of, you know, throughout the day, you know, with the idea that kids can improve in their ability to communicate. So it's not saying let's assess and once we get to a level 6 we can try this. It's saying, you know, let's try this now, even for our student that has maybe a very profound level of disability, and expose them to this core vocabulary.
Even if students are demonstrating behaviors at earlier communication levels on the communication matrix, they can still benefit from personal access to the Universal Core vocabulary. This concludes the module. Your feedback is important.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna, and this link is on our homepage, but I have taken you to the communication matrix itself, and like we're just gonna take a peek at this. So this is a site, as a free site, and it is, you know, it's of high quality. This has been they talk about Dr. Charity Rowland, who's been involved in lots of research over the years, but it is free. There is in fact, you can set up a free account to use this and administer the assessment for your students and store the information. There is the ability to like purchase advanced reports and things like that, you know, but the core things that you may want to use are free. So if we jump in there, I just was going to show you. Like I said, we will take the time when we're together to have you go through and do an assessment for at least one of your students. But we can look in here just to give you a picture. So I have an account here. I just logged in, and you can see I have Jane Doe here, which I will tell you is a fictitious student. But imagine this is where you would have your one-to-many students stored in here, and this could be administered and can and should be administered over time. But let's take a look. That's not what I wanted. Let's view profile. There we go. And I just wanted to show you now how does this work. I'm gonna do a print option just because I want to show this to you kind of on one screen, and this will print out in a nice, neat kind of a way. But so how do we get here? So when you take the communication matrix, you would essentially you would go online, you'd start an assessment for a student, and you simply answer a series of questions on what they are able to do. It's really nicely done. In fact, in some sections, if you have a question, you're saying, I'm not sure what that means. There's even little video snippets in there that you can watch and say where they show what the skill might look like for students. So it's really, really pretty helpful. And once you answer all these questions for students, you end up with a profile, and grouped in the way that you see on the screen here. So you can see over the left, familiar what we just talked about, level 1 through 7, all the way from the pre-intentional all the way up to the abstract symbols and language level. And then if I scroll down here at the bottom, notice how it's grouped by function. So refusal, to obtain something, social reasons, and then seeking or providing information, things like asking questions or naming things. And you can see the color coding, emerging, surpassed. So here and my fictitious student here, was rated in a way that shows that that pre-intentional is surpassed. They're beyond that, but you can see mastered and emerging levels. So here you see this picture of a student that is mastered levels of intentional. So are they intentional? Yes. But as we get at the higher levels here, we're emerging. And I think it was pointed out in the video too that this can different levels for different things. But that's kind of interesting because they, that's where we see here. You might have someone. So for example, this student seems to have more emerging skills. See all the yellow here? This student seems to have more emerging and even a few mastered skills to obtain something. Okay, so in other words, their language is a little bit more developed when they want to obtain something. Not so much in the social kinds of skills, and not so much in the information. So, good information. So this is all just taken from responding to questions in the matrix, and really kind of a nice assessment. We will have a chance on our February meeting to have you guys administer this for a student and kind of ponder how you might dive into using core vocabulary. This you can kind of see here. This is not particularly something that would be sensitive enough. I mean, could you use this as a progress monitoring tool? No, it wouldn't be sensitive enough to show growth quickly like we would see in progress monitoring, but could be a really great annually, or using and kind of looking at this over time, and when we have reevaluations for our students and things like this, could be really good. And up here, again, I'm in here as if I had given this the skills list. I mean, you can see just sort of a simple list of the skills, and mastery level. This is just showing all the questions I responded to. Got that. And yeah. You can email results to somebody. the custom report is where they're going to want your credit card number.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
and we probably should have some people maybe we should experiment with that to see if it's if there's benefit to that. But yeah, all the really good stuff here is free. So, all right, so let's log out here. And so the link to the communication matrix is in our course page. But I just wanted to just give you a quick preview there. We'll ask you, like, between now and when we meet together on February 1st, ask everybody, this will save us a little bit of time when we're together. Go ahead and set yourself up for an account. I mean, obviously, you're welcome to go in and play with it as much as you would like, but if you have your account set up, that'll kind of, you'll be ready to kind of dig into this when we meet in February. I mean, if you go to the site, up on sign in register, you can see there's a register as a new user, and it'll just walk you through how to do that. Okay, so there's that's kind of a reminder here on our course page. There's this website itself, and oops, let's fix that. April 4th. How about February 1st? Okay, so we'll have you guys do that in preparation for February. I'm just going to stop there. What questions do you have about what we've talked about so far? As you know, as we scroll down, or you can see on February 1st, we'll start digging into more of the modules, talking more about kind of the meat of teaching and modeling. So yeah, we can create these tools, but how are we going to teach it? How are we going to model it? Giving kids access, and then as we proceed on here, we'll get into some specific, really neat, really good quality materials on, where you'll kind of see it illustrated. How could you use this to do predictable chart writing? How could you use it to do structured reading activities and shared reading? So it definitely will get into the routines. All right. If any thoughts and questions out there, or even kind of housekeeping questions on registration or things like that you might have. Okay. We're at a pretty good stopping point then. If there's no questions, I will. Next time we meet will be our time together in Red Oak on February 1st. The only homework I'm giving you is if you would set up an account on Communication Matrix on that website, that would be wonderful. And I will look forward to seeing you all on February 1st. I'll send out some reminders. We will have lunch that day. It'll be a pretty full day. We'll try to get through a lot. So we are going to have lunch on site. That was kind of part of your registration. So thanks for tuning in today. I'm sorry. I want to show you one more thing, if I could. I believe that I am recording this right now. If I believed incorrectly, because I had a couple tech issues early on, I'll fix that for next time. But a few people I know we're going to have to jump on late today and said, hey, could you record it? And hopefully I did that, and if so, I'll get that out to everybody. But for those of you that, if you have a conflict, if you have to miss something, I mean, I wanted to show you on Project Core, under the PD modules here, the things that I've linked to are these facilitated materials that we're using as we work together. But all these modules, there's an online self-directed module. So today we did the overview and we worked through the communication module. So I've been operating from this, here's the materials to use as a group together. But there's an independent online, so you go in there and it's going to take you through just a little mini module. And if for example, if for some of you, and for some of you that are taking it for credit, we need to document your attendance, that type of thing. But if you go through these mini modules, it will send you an email at the end saying, congratulations, you finished the overview module. And you could email that to me and to show me that you made that up. So I guess I'm just pointing out that there's even if I didn't record correctly today, there's a way to go through and view these modules if someone missed part of it, that type of thing. So I wanted just to point out that those are there on the website. And then if anybody didn't get a chance to click on the sign in just to document that you were here, that would be wonderful if you would do that before you check out. And otherwise, thank you for being here today. Everybody have a great evening, and we will see you on February 1st. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me by phone or email. Have a great evening.
Thanks, Ron.
Bye.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you.
Thanks. Now's where I see if I actually did record it. So.
It was blinking on the top of my screen that it was being recorded, so I think you did good.
All right. We'll find out. So, okay, take care. Have a good night.
Good night.